Welcome. Today we are diving deep into that really powerful 7.6 magnitude earthquake that hit the southern Philippines recently, specifically Mindanao. We've got eyewitness accounts, official reports, geological data, the whole picture. And our mission really is to piece together how this one massive seismic event just instantly spiraled into, well, human tragedy and serious infrastructure problems. We're going from the geology, the why, right into those first minutes of panic and, sadly, the casualties.
And that geology is definitely the place to start, because this wasn't just strong, it was incredibly shallow. It hit at 9.43 in the morning, local time, that's 0143 GMT, off the coast near Manatown. But the key thing, only 10 kilometers deep.
10 kilometers. Geologically, that's like right there on the doorstep, isn't it? What does that shallow depth mean for people actually feeling it?
It means maximum impact on the surface. A deeper quake, say 50, 100 kilometers down, the Earth itself acts like a buffer. But a 7.6 at only 10 kilometers, it doesn't just shake the ground, it really slams it violently. And that intensity immediately led to those first big consequences, starting with the tsunami warnings.
Right, yeah. A 7.6 triggers immediate alerts, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Regional authorities went straight to high alert. The initial threat assessment was pretty serious. A warning went out for potentially hazardous tsunami waves. We're talking coasts within about 186 miles, so 300 kilometers of the epicenter.
That's a huge radius.
It is. Now, thankfully, that specific threat was later lifted. But the panic, that was real and widespread. You had neighboring Indonesia, specifically North Sulawesi and Papua, they issued warnings too. That shows you the scale, the potential for this to be a transnational disaster, simply because it was shallow and underwater.
And that initial violent slam you mentioned, that intense shaking, it led directly to some really tragic and maybe unexpected ways people died. Reports confirm at least 5 deaths initially, but the ways they died are quite telling. You had, for instance, 2 patients in a hospital who died from heart attacks during the shaking. Just the sheer stress of it pushed their existing conditions over the edge.
Yeah, that really speaks volumes about the immediate terror, doesn't it?
It does.
And it highlights that the danger isn't just, a building collapsing on you. It's the psychological shock, the physiological stress. It's multi-layered. And beyond those medical tragedies, we saw the direct impact of structural failure. 1 person killed by falling debris in Manay City, that's in Davao Oriental.
Okay.
And then if you look a bit further out, the danger from the landscape itself, landslides. 2 villagers died when the quake triggered a devastating landslide. This is in a remote gold mining area, Pantukan town in Davao de Oro province.
So secondary effects, debris, landslides, often compounding the loss, especially in those more vulnerable regions.
Exactly. Populated, yes, but maybe on unstable ground. These secondary effects are often what drive up the casualty figures after the initial shock.
What strikes me here is just the speed needed for the response. You have authorities, President Marcos Jr.'s government, trying to assess damage, coordinate rescues, but they're dealing with collapsing debris, stress-induced deaths, and landslides, all happening almost at once.
It's an incredibly complex emergency situation right from minute 1.
Let's shift gears a bit to the human experience on the ground. The sources we have paint a really terrifying picture of the chaos, the footage, the personal stories. They really bring it home.
Yeah, the sense of just complete loss of control comes through so strongly in the accounts. We saw a video, students just sprinting out of classrooms. And maybe the most striking thing, radio anchors literally leaving their microphones mid-broadcast. The shaking was apparently so bad, people were forced down onto all fours just to stay upright. Even things like motorcycles just knocked right over.
We have a specific account from Christine Siert. She's a teacher in Compostela, which is quite near Manay, the epicenter town. She was actually in an online meeting.
Ah, yes. Her account is incredibly valuable. It captures that escalation, that building terror. She said, and this is a direct quote from our source material, "It was very slow at first, then it got stronger. That's the longest time of my life."
Just chillin'.
It really is. She said the shaking was too strong to even try and walk out immediately. And the immediate aftermath. Ceilings in some offices collapsed. Many students, she mentioned the school had about 1,000, suffered panic attacks, difficulty breathing, just instant physical stress responses.
And that intensity wasn't just hyper-localized, right? We heard from Kath Cortez, a journalist in Davao City, which is a fair distance away. She reported small cracks appearing in her family's ground floor walls. They actually fled the house.
Right. When a 7.6 quake causes structural damage and that kind of panic in a major city some distance off, You really get a sense of the immense energy that was released.
Okay, so let's dig into that structural damage a bit more, because this is where the long-term recovery, the costs really start to add up. One of the big things reported was cracks in the Magsaysay Bridge structure in Butuan City.
Yeah, Magsaysay Bridge damage, that's significant. Bridges like that are critical arteries, right, for transport, for commerce. Any damage there has knock-on effects.
Sure.
The governor of Davao Oriental also confirmed damage to other buildings across the province, though details were maybe a bit thin initially. And then there's the utilities, always vulnerable. The energy secretary was reported monitoring 4 electric companies in Mindanao because the power supply tripped in several areas.
Tripped, meaning shut off.
Yeah, it could be automatic safety cutoffs, precautionary measures, or it could be direct physical damage to lines or substations. It wasn't immediately clear. But either way, it just instantly highlights the fragility of that essential infrastructure during a major quake.
Which brings us back to the big why. Why this region? Why does the Philippines deal with this scale of earthquake activity so often?
Well, it comes down to location, 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 as they say. The Philippines sits squarely on the Pacific Ring of Fire.
Ah, the Ring of Fire. We hear that term a lot.
We do, and for good reason. It's this massive, like 25,000-mile horseshoe-shaped zone of intense seismic and volcanic activity that rings the Pacific Ocean basin. Most of the world's earthquakes happen along this ring, so the Philippines being right on it. That explains why the country is constantly under stress. They experience, get this, over 800 earthquakes every single year. Most are small, thankfully, but the potential for large ones is always there. It's just fundamental geology dictating the hazard level.
Okay, now here's where the story takes another turn and frankly gets even more terrifying for the people living through it. That 7.6 quake, it wasn't the end of it, not even for that day. It was followed by a really severe aftershock.
Yeah, severe is almost putting it mildly. Later that same day, around 7 p.m., which is 1100 GMT, a magnitude 6.9 aftershock hit.
6.9. That's huge for an aftershock.
It's massive. To give you some context, a 6.9 magnitude quake just 10 days before this main 7.6 shock had hit nearby Bogo City in Cebu province, and that 6.9 quake killed 71 people. So this aftershock wasn't some minor rumble. It was another potential major disaster hitting a population already reeling.
Unbelievable. Just trying to cope with the first quake, maybe search efforts underway, damage assessment, and then boom, another huge one.
Imagine the psychological toll. It's almost unimaginable.
And the 6.9 aftershock then triggered another tsunami warning.
It did, yes. The Seismology Agency put out a fresh warning. This time they said possible tsunami waves could be more than a meter, about 3 feet higher than normal tides, and expected within the next 2 hours.
So you survived the 7.6, you're maybe checking on loved ones, looking at the damage, and then you get hit by a 6.9 and told the sea might rise again.
Exactly. The sheer relentless pressure. Now, the sources we have don't immediately report new casualties specifically from that 6.9 aftershock, but the fear, the disruption, the renewed panic, it must have just been exponential.
And like you said, this whole sequence connects back to that broader context. This 7.6 event wasn't in isolation. It hit just 10 days after that deadly 6.9 quake in Cebu, and aftershocks from that earlier quake were apparently still being felt in the region.
Right. It paints a picture of continuous seismic stress.
So looking across everything we've discussed, what are the key takeaways for someone trying to understand the full impact here?
Well, I think what really stands out in pulling together all the sources is that this wasn't just one kind of disaster hitting. It was a cascade. You had simultaneous different kinds of failure happening. You had the immediate direct casualties from shaking and terrain failure, like the miners caught in the landslide, the person hit by debris in Mati.
Right.
Then you had critical infrastructure starting to fail. Those cracks reported in the Magsaysay Bridge, the power outages.
Yeah.
That points to longer-term problems. And maybe most profoundly, you had this intense, prolonged psychological and physiological stress, caused not just by the main shock, but by that incredibly powerful 6.9 aftershock hitting a region already on edge. It's living with this reality of continuous, high-level seismic activity. That's the core reality.
So for you listening, we've really seen how the basic geography being on the Ring of Fire shapes the hazard. It dictates that a major earthquake isn't just a single moment of terror. It's a rapid unfolding of multiple crises.
Yeah.
Human, structural, psychological.
Yeah, and this leads to a really important question, I think, especially looking forward, something to really chew on. Given the sequence we saw at deadly 6.9, then just 10 days later, this major 7.6, followed almost immediately by another dangerous 6.9 aftershock. What does that reality, that cycle of continuous high-magnitude quakes actually mean for the future? How do you plan for long-term disaster preparedness, for building codes, for community mental health in a place like the Philippines, where the challenge isn't just recovering from one big hit, but essentially surviving continuous impact?
A tough question with no easy answers. Something for us all to think about.